Thank you so much. So as I mentioned earlier, so the Wichita Rare Earth Project is Defense Metals' main and really only project at the moment. We are located in British Columbia. So just key highlights about our project. We own 100% of this project, and the intention is to be able to provide and supply rare earth globally. In terms of accessibility, is really good. It's fairly well accessible for a mining project. We have built a very strong technical team, and now we are at the pre-feasibility study, and we have hired engineering firms with very good experience in mining, but as well as rare earth. So Craig Taylor is the CEO and director of Defense Metals. I am the president. And as I said, we have a very strong technical team. One of the key instrumental people that we have includes John Good, which is our head of metallurgy with many years of experience in rare earth, as well as Dr. William Bird, who is a mineralogist and a PhD as well, and he has a significant knowledge in the space. But our team collectively supports very well the project. So relative to other companies, we are significantly underpriced, and this is what this slide is trying to show. Where our market cap is and where we could potentially end up. And we feel very strongly that once we continue to approach production, that we will see a very significant valuation for our project. So currently we have about 255 million shares outstanding. Warrants are about 30 million, fully diluted with options and all. We have about 360 million shares, and our market cap it's in US dollars is about 40 million. So for those of you that are not very familiar with rare earth, it's effectively used in all major industrial sectors, including agriculture, but as well, probably the sector where it is the most critical right now is the automotive. It's used, neodymium magnets are used in electric vehicle motors. They make the most efficient motors. But it's also used and it's critical for the aerospace defense industry, hence the name Defense Metals, and is used in other sectors like healthcare and electronics. So right now, China is the major producer, accounting for about 70% of the mine production, although they only have about 40% of the resources, of rather, 33.8 to be more precise, according to USGS. And but they also refine even more than 70%. They refine about 85% of all the total rare earths, and they control the supply chain right now. And so, and this is what this slide shows. So you have various producers, of course, at the top. We have China. United States is second with 38,000 tons, about 40,000 tons. But still, most of the cracking and the separation, even for the United States, although they now started to process it as well, still most of it's still done in China. So this is really showing what the landscape for rare earths, such a critical element, is right now. So as for us, with the Wichita project is highlighted in there, we are planning to produce about 25,000 tons, which is roughly about 10% of the current global production. And we want to build the supply chain here. So the cracking and separation continues to be investigated, and particularly the hydrometallurgy or the cracking, as we highlighted here, is being studied right now with our pre-feasibility study. So this is just to give you a sense of demand for one application for electric vehicles. And what this slide is showing is that, by 2033, 2035, we would have to double the production of rare earth in order to fulfill the demand for rare earth for electric vehicle applications. And that's just one application. And so if you look the demand and the supply of rare earth back in 2012, for instance, it was around 110,000 tons. That's where 110,000. And right now we are over 250,000 tons in terms of demand. So, and the whole electric vehicle sort of demand has not even really kicked in yet. That was just a normal organic growth of demand for all those other sectors that I showed you initially. So if we continue seeing the demand for rare earth as we become more technology advanced as a society, and using technology and AI and other technologies to optimize our production and improve our way of living, we are probably going to need more rare earth for all the other applications, all the other sectors, in addition to electric vehicles. So in terms of location, as I mentioned earlier, so this is just an example pictures. It shows below here, we have the Prince George train yard. So Prince George is about 80 kilometers from the project and is an industrial center, as is depicted by their train yard there. A lot of commerce coming through that town. At the top, you could see where the project is, and you could see these logging roads, essentially, which lead all the way from Prince George to the site. And so about 5 kilometers away, we have, which is, I think, still the third largest, but increasing, the third largest port in Canada. But really, the idea for them is to develop to the point of becoming the second largest port in Canada. And we are just about 500 kilometers away. They continue to increase capacity there. So this is our resource. This slide shows the resource where we are. We have about, measured indicated, about 34 million tons at 2%. The other information that you can see here is that we are mostly a light deposit, which then obviously include the neodymium, which is critical to make neodymium magnets that then go into electric vehicles. And neodymium and praseodymium would account for most of the value of our deposit. So here, what is depicted is a conceptual pit shell for the deposit. And what I would like to bring to your attention, without spending too much time here, is really the colors. At the top, as you can see, the gradient here, yellows and greens are really high grade. It's more than 2.5. We see at 3.8 to more than 5% are the lighter greens to yellows. And you can see at the top here, the deposit, that's what we have. So what that means is that in the first few years, we have relatively high grade. And that will make it possible for us to produce a high grade mineral concentrate. This is our flow sheet. We start mining, crushing, grinding. So this what shows is that we are going to use what is a conventional rare earth process, that is, relative with other of our peers. We have a relatively less complex, let's put it like that, flow sheet. And we have been able to produce, which is really key here, a sellable mineral concentrate, which is more than 45% TREO. Although our average grade for the whole deposit is about 2, we are actually able to produce mineral concentrate, as we have been able to prove at the pilot level, which is, more than 50% total rare earth, which makes the project more economic. Because then the hydrometallurgy, the leaching, is seeing a much higher grade material, requiring less overall infrastructure, less reagents, and so forth. And this is essentially what makes the project economic. So here are some of the results, the flotation results, and the recovery rates. It's not just the ability to produce, like for instance, here we see a 45 TREO. This was some of the initial results that we had, but we also have very high recovery rates of more than 75%, in some cases 81%. So we also got very good recoveries from our hydrometallurgy results, more than 95% recovery of neodymium and praseodymium. So this is probably one of the most important slides, which I will spend a little bit of time here, because it compares our deposit with other producers. And so when one is investing in rare, especially hard rock projects, it's important to see whether these projects are able to produce what we call a flotation concentrate, which is of high grade. And by high grade, I mean at least more than 40%. That's the case of Lynas Corp in Australia. But if you compare to other projects, the one Mountain Pass is 60% TREO, and ones in China are around 50. And so that is essential to make the project economic. Just like in some projects in copper, where we first concentrate the copper product into at least 30% or so before going into chemical processing or other processes. The same thing for rare earths. It's important independently whether you have a 2% grade like you see here. Our average grade is relatively low, which means our mining costs might be low, but mining is the least of the costs when you break it down into mining and processing and eventually separation. Mining is really the smaller portion of it all. And so it's so critical when assessing a rare earth project to see whether a high-grade flotation concentrate is able to be produced. And of the 400 plus projects out there, just really a handful of them can. And that is the strength of our project. And in part, the reason why we can do that is because we have the right mineralogy. Again, comparing our mineralogy with the other producers, we have the bosnasite, the monazite, and it is coarse grained. So that's why it makes it easier to upgrade as well. So this is a very important slide. I'm happy to discuss more about the strength of our project. So going forward, right now we are at H1 2024, the first half, and we are really concentrated and focused in completing the pre-feasibility study. That's going to be a huge milestone for us. A lot of the major institutional investors have asked us for that, for the completion of this pre-feasibility study before they are ready to invest. And we are very excited with the progress we have made, and we look forward to be able to put that out. And once we complete the pre-feasibility study, we will jump right into the feasibility study. And we hope by 2025, we'll be able to do optimization and scale up of flotation and hydrometallurgy pilot plants and all these other things in completion of our bankable feasibility study. So that's where we are. Key things that we have been able to achieve in the last two years. We acquired 100% of Wachida. We completed significant drilling. We have a resource with indicated and some measured as well categories of our resource. That's quite significant and important to move on into the feasibility stage. And we have also signed agreements with our First Nations. They actually have a position in the company. They are very supportive of the project. So community-wise, we are very, very strong. We're also improving our ESG across the board. Of course, lots of environmental studies, which are high standards in Canada already. Our social aspect with the community and the First Nations, and the governance. We have changed our board, adding more independent members, and really improving the ESG component of our operations. So I leave it as that, and I will take questions from now. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the great presentation. We do have a lot of time in front of us. It will be taking quite a few seconds here to get questions from everyone. Please just, if you do have any question, critical metals, critical elements, all of that is very relevant into everyone's conversation right now. So I'm sure there is a lot of questions out there that people want to have answers to. So that being said, let's jump into it. we did hear lately a lot of news in your sector. There has been a lot of space being taken by new discovery, new guys coming on the block. Every single news headers was bigger than the other. But they're at the beginning of it. They're at the early stage of it. How far are you ahead of all of those projects? And how do you compete with all of those projects?
It's actually, as it turns out, quite difficult to compete with these projects because so there are two components when you look at junior mining companies. You can separate it into there's many really aspects to it, but it's just to simplify it. You have projects and they are either good or maybe not so good. And it takes sometimes time to find that out. And sometimes it's pretty obvious because they are really difficult projects for different aspects, that, we usually know in mining, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's the resource, we can understand that is either really good or maybe not so bad. And then there's some gray areas in some projects. And then you have the promoters. There are folks that are really good at promoting projects. And that becomes a little bit confusing because if for a sector, if I can call it that, like rare earth, which is relatively complex, is new, it's not like gold or copper, has many moving parts. And so when somebody comes in and is a very good promoter, with flashy, PowerPoint presentations and other things, and promises that are well crafted, to be able to go around some of the regulatory, things that we need to follow, it becomes very difficult for investors to know what is good and what is bad. So that is what, in part, we are up against. So there is many new companies, and some of them are frankly good, and it's okay. Because as I said, sometimes folks can look at a company, even the gold companies, like they drilled, it's very good grade, it's surface, it has potential, and you can just immediately understand the potential as well. So for us, I think our strength we are in North America. And there's not a lot of projects that are in North America that have the strength that our project has. As I mentioned, it is about probably more than 400 occurrences and other projects at different stages. And of those that are hard rock and those that actually can produce this high mineral concentrate, maybe a handful. And those are the ones that the investors need to understand that they need to look for. Because what happens otherwise is that you're investing in projects which are hard rock and they cannot upgrade. They can only perhaps upgrade to, maybe they have a high grade already, 5%, and maybe they can go to 15% concentrate. But then all the other projects, the ones that are in production right now, will be processing a material which is more than 40%, more than 50%. And that's difficult to compete. In our case at Defense Metals, we have done significant work, and you're alluding to that, the stages where we are, we've been able to spend, quite significant, more than $5 million just in metallurgy alone, in pilot plants and things of that kind, to be able to de-risk the metallurgy of our project. And in rare earth, sometimes you can have billions of tons, but if you cannot really do that cracking properly, pun intended here, and then it's just not going to be economic. So for us, our job really is to be as transparent as possible and be able, and our responsibility in part, to be able to express and explain to investors why we have such a strong project and why we will be in production and others likely will not. And why we are one of perhaps the top 10 projects of the 400 plus or top 5, in the world. So that is basically where we are. Sorry, I cannot hear you. If you.
Oh, there you go. First time I was muted. There you go. So thank you very much. This doesn't happen often. So one of the things that I like about your comment is that basically somehow the takeaway is that more everyone talks about it, more it educates people about the sector. And obviously, it's always the investors who do their due diligence to look into the project and to not be just stranded by promotion, but actually look at what project are economical out there or not, and then wrap their head around that. And regarding that, is there still drilling that will be happening at your project within the next year or 2 years to expand the resource, or are you at the stage where the resource is comfortable at the size it is, and then that kind of expenses can be pushed further down the line, apart from obviously more precision drilling and then definition in the resource?
Right. So we will definitely be drilling more. So as far as our resource is concerned, we are happy with the size of the resource. We think it's sufficient. We have drilled to a point where we have measured indicated resources, and we will need to continue to do studies and perhaps drill a little bit more to really reach that reserve level, right? Which will come with additional economic, analysis and studies. So yes, we will be drilling, but also, and that is within our own resource. But we also going to be doing more exploration drilling because we have a significant area to look for other areas within our deposit that we might find satellite deposits there. It's apparently the studies show that these deposits, these rare earth carbonatite deposits, they happen in I call it satellites, if I may. You find one and you might find another one nearby. So we're definitely going to do more exploration as well. So we'll be drilling, and we'll be looking forward to finding good results and sharing with investors in that front.
Perfect. Additionally to that, we have a very interesting question from Alfred, actually, who's been following the IIF, I think, since the beginning, because he's always asking very, very on-point question. Is there an established processing method concerning the mixture of minerals, or is it possible to separate them, or is there no need of mineral separation? So exactly how does it go at the processing? Once you mined it, when you took it, when you have those big chunk of rocks that are full of colors and so on, what happens afterwards?
All right, without being too technical, right? So, I still have my slide. I don't know if you can see it. There are about 200 plus minerals that actually have rare earth in them, but only a handful of them actually being processed economically for the recovery of rare earths. And the reason for that is because these particular minerals tend to have a high percentage of total rare earth in them. So, and that includes bastnäsite and monazite. And we have both in our deposit. When you have deposits with a cocktail of different minerals, and sometimes these minerals have low percentage of total rare earths, like for instance the eudolite, has about up to 6% total rare earths, which means even if you separated that one mineral 100% and remove all the other non-rare earth minerals, the maximum mineral concentrated you can get, that's not really economic. Right, the way we see it, and so having these key minerals like bastnäsite and monazite and parasite that carry high percentages of rare earth, it's important, and it helps for the economics. Now, some of these other ones, they're out there, sometimes they carry high percentages of the heavies, and maybe if you can separate them, you can end up, having an economic project if prices are relatively high. So now when you look at bastnäsite and monazite, there are papers out there trying to separate them, but I don't think anybody has been really economically successful in doing them. There's some losses of both. So when you have a mixture of bastnäsite and monazite, you look for processes to process them together, not to separate them. I hope that was clear.
Well, I studied chemistry, so for me it's quite clear, but I think the explanation was clear for everyone else also. So I thank you again very much for that question, Alfred. I hope it's clear to you, Alfred. If so, please text me in the chat so I'll know if you need other details than that. One last thing, we're running almost out of time, 2 minutes. Can you talk to us about a bit infrastructure down there exactly? How can you leverage that? How close are you to big infrastructure? Is that a huge advantage of your project versus maybe other projects that are located further away?
Yeah, so relatively to other mining projects in Canada, North American period, we relatively well positioned because, you can actually drive to the site. The exception might be, during the heavy snow winter times, which, these logging roads, are really not maintained. But otherwise, you can actually drive from Prince George all the way to the site and it will take you less than 2 hours. So for a mining project that has that proximity is very good. So we're about 40 kilometers away of a town called Bear Lake, and they have rail not very far from passing by the city or by the town. So they have rail nearby. They have gas infrastructure. They have power infrastructure, and so it's relatively close. So it's fairly well positioned in that regard, and we will be looking at applying for infrastructure funding together with the First Nations, because our group, First Nations group, they are very much in the construction space as well, and they are looking forward for the industrial development of the area, and so we will be definitely looking to apply for grants and other government development funding that is out there for the infrastructure.
Well, this is great. I think that this emphasizes again on how strong that partnership is with the First Nation, how critical it is to the advancement of the project. And to have been in the commodity sector myself for over 20 years, I really want to congratulate you on that deal. This is not every day that we see those kind of partnership. And I think that this is really, really not just a great step forward for your company, and I think it's obviously quite a milestone, but I think it's quite the example to show everyone out what the route is to follow into partnerships with First Nation and how to actually leverage what others see as maybe some possible frictions and so on, at actually really a plus and a bonus in a project. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having us.
So this is it. Our time is up. We'll be keeping an eye on you, obviously, Dr. Moreno, on the company, keeping on following the stories, and we'll be very excited to have your update next time. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.